So, what if we've been looking at human history all wrong? Today, we're diving into a really radical theory, one that treats entire civilizations not just as collections of people, but as living, thinking beings with their own vital signs. And this quote from Arthur C. Clarke, it feels just about perfect for what we're about to get into. Because the concept we're exploring today definitely sounds like it's pulled from science fiction, but it's being modeled with some pretty startling mathematical precision. Which all leads to the one big, mind-bending question that unlocks everything. What if our societies are more than just a metaphor for an organism? What if they actually operate like one? And what if they have a mind of their own? To get your head around this, just look at nature. Think about a flock of starlings moving through the sky like a single, flowing entity, or an ant colony solving these incredibly complex logistical problems. There's no CEO ant, no general starling shouting orders. It's something called emergent intelligence, where all this complex, coordinated behavior just appears from really simple local interactions. The whole is so much greater than the sum of its parts. Okay, so hold that thought, because that exact same principle is at the heart of this new framework. The idea is that our societies work just like that starling flock, but on a massive planetary scale, as these vast living neural networks. And get this, stress acts like a neurotransmitter, pushing the whole system to adapt, to learn, or maybe even to collapse. So, how in the world do you even begin to model something so huge? Well, the answer is a system called the CAMS framework. That stands for Complex Adaptive Model State. Let's take a look at the blueprint of how it all works. At its core, CAMS is built on the pretty well-established science of complex adaptive systems, or CAS for short. And you're actually surrounded by them. The economy is one. An ecosystem is one. Your own brain is one. They're all systems made of independent agents, like traders or animals or neurons, whose interactions create these larger patterns that are constantly adapting and changing. So the CAMS framework looks at society through 8 core functional nodes. And these aren't just social classes. Think of them as the essential functions any society needs to survive. Everything from leadership and security to commerce and storing knowledge. These are, in a way, the major lobes of the societal brain. And then, each of those 8 nodes is measured using 4 key metrics. Think of them as the vital signs of a society. Coherence is basically how much trust and alignment there is. Capacity is the ability to get things done. Stress, well, that's the pressure on the system. And abstraction tracks how complex the society's technology and its institutions have become. And here's where it all comes together, and this is the really cool part. The framework takes all that data from all those nodes and metrics and combines it into one single number, the System Health Index. It's like taking a civilization's temperature, its blood pressure, and its heart rate, all to get one powerful diagnostic score. Okay, so we have a number, a single number. But does that actually mean anything? Can this model read the vital signs of history and tell us something we don't already know? I mean, can it actually predict the fate of nations? Well, the claim is pretty startling. 87% historical accuracy. The model has reportedly been able to forecast major societal shifts, things like a collapse or a total reorganization, within a 25-year window. That's a huge claim. Now, to put that number into perspective, let's see how it stacks up. The CAMS framework's reported accuracy of 87%, well, that's significantly higher than other major models. Clio Dynamics, which is all about studying historical cycles, is around 78%. And the pretty well-known Fragile States Index is at about 65%. So this suggests a really big leap in predictive power. Let's apply this to a classic case, the fall of Rome. Back in 200 CE, the model shows a healthy, stable empire, high marks across the board. But then you fast forward to 350 CE, and CAMS flags a critical drop in its system health. It's like an early warning light flashing on the dashboard, showing the system was terminally ill more than a century before the official end in 476 CE. And this isn't just about digging up ancient history. The framework is being applied to our world, right now, reportedly identifying some critical trends. For instance, it points to declining internal coherence in the United States, even with high capacity. And it flags the potential risks of runaway institutional complexity, that abstraction metric, in China. It's like a tool for seeing the deep patterns flowing underneath the daily headlines. So, who on earth comes up with a theory like this? This wasn't cooked up in a university lab or some government think tank. The story behind CAMS is just as fascinating as the theory itself. It's a story about a total outsider and a powerful new kind of collaborator. The creator of the CAMS framework is Kari McKern, and her journey to this discovery was shaped by this incredibly profound early commitment to truth that was actually born from a childhood mistake. As a teenager obsessed with UFOs, she misrepresented a flawed photo as evidence. The disgust she felt from that, in her own words, shaped everything that came after. It gave her this lifelong, ferocious dedication to intellectual honesty. McCarran really fits the mold of the classic freelance scientist, a tradition that includes people like Charles Darwin. She's an independent, pattern-seeking thinker, driven by a deep curiosity, not by institutional pressures or funding cycles. And that outsider perspective was absolutely essential. It let her see connections across different fields that specialists, often stuck in their silos, might have missed. And her own unique life path gave her this incredibly powerful analytical lens. As a self-described Diogenes in a barrel, her experiences, including navigating the world with ADHD and her gender transition, gave her this intimate understanding of how to see complex, often rigid systems from the outside looking in. This wasn't a distraction from her work. It was the very perspective that let her see the deep structural patterns of society itself. Her Darwin moment, her big aha, it came during a 5 a.m. conversation with an AI. She asked it a kind of obscure question about ancient Greek sophistry, and the AI's response sparked this crucial insight, that a society's abstract ideas are fundamentally tied to its physical flow of resources. And suddenly, boom, the entire 8-node, 4-metric framework just clicked into place. A perfect fusion of human intuition and artificial intelligence. So this brings us to the really profound implications of the CAMS framework. Because if it holds up, even partially, it represents nothing less than a new science of history. A shift from subjective stories to something more like societal physics. What this framework really tries to do is make entire societies numerically tractable. That's a fancy way of saying it takes the messy, story-driven study of history and tries to put it on a foundation of hard, quantifiable data, of physics of society. The goal is to stop just arguing over interpretations and actually start measuring the underlying forces at play. I mean, think about the ultimate application here, a societal MRI. Imagine a tool that could give us a non-invasive scan of a nation's health, identifying stressors long before they become full-blown crises. For policymakers, this could mean a huge shift away from just reacting to disasters and toward proactive, data-driven governance. And all of this leaves us with one final, massive question to chew on. If a society really is a living system, with vital signs that we can measure and monitor, then who exactly are its doctors? And what would it even mean to practice medicine on the scale of an entire civilization?